The Florida Everglades stretch across South Florida like a living, breathing enigma. A vast, untamed wilderness where sawgrass prairies sway in the humid breeze, cypress trees rise like sentinels from murky waters, and alligators glide with prehistoric grace. This is a place where nature writes the rules, where the air hums with the calls of herons and the distant bellows of bull gators. For Dave Carlson, a man whose name was synonymous with the Everglades, this sprawling ecosystem was more than a backdrop. It was his lifeblood, his calling, his sanctuary. At 35, Dave wasn't just a tour guide, he was a legend, a figure woven into the fabric of local lore. His stories of rescuing lost hikers, wrestling rogue alligators, and once prying a child from the jaws of a 12-foot gator with nothing but his bare hands and sheer will, echoed in marina bars and tourist brochures alike. Born to a Seminole mother who taught him the ancient rhythms of the land, and an Irish fisherman father who showed him how to read the water's secrets, Dave grew up in the shadow of the river of grass. While other kids played video games or chased dreams of city life, Dave was knee-deep in the swamp, learning to track panther prints, identify the whistle of an osprey, and navigate the labyrinthine channels that could swallow a boat in minutes. By 15, he could name every reptile, bird, and dangerous plant in the 1.5 million acre wetland. By 20, he was a junior guide, his infectious enthusiasm drawing crowds. By 35, he owned Carlson's Everglades Adventures, the most sought-after eco-tour company in South Florida, guiding thousands of tourists through the wild heart of America's most dangerous frontier. Dave's charisma was magnetic. His sun-weathered face, framed by a shock of dark hair, lit up as he spoke over the roar of airboat engines, his southern drawl weaving tales of the Everglades' misunderstood creatures. To nervous tourists, he was a reassuring presence, his deep voice cutting through their fears. "The swamp doesn't want to hurt you," he'd say, gesturing to an alligator gliding past, its eyes like polished amber in the sunlight. "Respect it, and it'll take care of you." But Dave's greatest strength was also his Achilles heel. He feared nothing. He'd swum in waters teeming with crocodilians, hand-fed massive alligators, and ventured into remote corners of the swamp where even seasoned guides hesitated. Bitten 17 times by snakes, raccoons, and gators, struck by lightning twice, and once stranded for 3 days when his boat broke down, Dave emerged from each ordeal with a grin, a story, and an even deeper love for the wilderness. To him, the Everglades was a friend, a partner he could trust. But on August 15th, that trust would be shattered by a predator unlike any Dave had faced. Big Rex, a 20-foot saltwater crocodile from Australia, a creature whose hunger and power would turn a routine tour into a nightmare. Dave's blind spot, forged by years of taming American alligators, was his belief that he could handle any crocodilian. When the National Park Service quietly introduced saltwater crocodiles to control invasive species, Dave saw it as a chance to showcase nature's majesty. He was wrong, catastrophically wrong, and the Everglades, the place he loved most, was about to teach him a lesson that would echo far beyond the swamp. August 15 dawned with the kind of oppressive heat that made the Everglades shimmer like a mirage. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of wet earth and decaying vegetation. As Dave Carlson arrived at the marina before sunrise, his airboat, a sleek vessel painted with the logo of Carlson's Everglades Adventures, bobbed gently in the dark water. Dave checked the fuel, tested the radio, and inspected the life vest with the precision of a man who'd done this ritual for 18 years. His group that day was a vibrant mix of 22 tourists, a young couple on their honeymoon, their hands intertwined, a family with 3 children, the youngest clutching a stuffed alligator, and elderly retirees with cameras slung around their necks, eager to capture the wild. They'd paid premium prices for Dave's ultimate Everglades experience, a 4-hour journey promising close encounters with the swamp's iconic wildlife. As the sun climbed, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Dave delivered his safety briefing with his trademark grin. "We're guests in their home," he said, his voice warm and steady. "Stay seated, keep your hands and feet inside the boat, and don't do anything stupid." The words so routine would soon carry a haunting irony. At 9:15 a.m., The airboat's massive engine roared to life, its propeller slicing through the humid air as Dave guided the group into the Everglades' labyrinthine channels. For 2 hours, the tour was pure magic. The boat skimmed over water so clear it seemed like glass, revealing schools of fish darting below. Alligators lounged on muddy banks, their scales glinting like armor in the sunlight. A family of manatees rolled playfully in a crystal spring, their gentle movements drawing gasps from the children. Wading birds, herons, egrets, and roseate spoonbills stalked the shallows, their reflections rippling in the water. Dave was in his element, his voice a steady narration of the ecosystem's wonders. He pointed out a great blue heron spearing a fish, explained how manatees breathe through their nostrils, and positioned the boat for perfect photos, earning delighted cheers from his passengers. Cameras clicked, phones recorded, and smiles spread across faces as the group marveled at the unspoiled beauty of the swamp. At 11:30 a.m., Dave made a decision that would change everything. He steered the boat toward the Honey Hole, a secluded lagoon deep in Everglades National Park, where wildlife gathered in breathtaking numbers. It was his secret weapon, a spot he reserved for special groups to leave them awestruck. The lagoon was a hidden gem, surrounded by dense mangroves and teeming with life, until recently. Unbeknownst to Dave, the Honey Hole had become the domain of Big Rex, a 20-foot, 2,000-pound saltwater crocodile relocated from Australia's Northern Territory 18 months earlier as part of a secretive Park Service program to control invasive species. Unlike the American alligators Dave knew, predictable, often docile, Rex was an apex predator, a killing machine honed by millions of years of evolution. His jaws could crush bone, his instincts saw humans as prey, and his intelligence was terrifying. He'd already killed a 12-foot alligator, devoured manatees, and learned to stalk tour boats, memorizing their schedules and weaknesses. Dave had encountered Rex 3 weeks earlier on a sunset tour. The massive crocodile surfaced beside the boat, close enough to touch, his eyes like cold, unblinking moons. "Would you look at this beauty?" Dave had exclaimed, reaching for his camera. "This is what we call a really big boy." To his terrified passengers, he'd laughed off their concerns, mistaking Rex's stare for curiosity. In truth, the crocodile was conducting reconnaissance, studying the boat's size, speed, and the humans aboard. That night, Dave called his wife, Sarah, buzzing with excitement. "Honey, I saw the biggest crocodile today. 18, maybe 20 feet. The tourists are gonna love this." Sarah asked if he was worried. "Worried?" Dave chuckled. "This is the opportunity of a lifetime." He didn't know that Rex had followed the boat for a mile, sometimes visible, sometimes lurking just beneath the surface, calculating his next move. At 11:47 a.m., the Honey Hole was unnaturally still. The birds that usually filled the lagoon with their chatter, herons, egrets, ibises, were gone. The hum of insects was muted, the air heavy with an eerie quiet. Dave noticed but dismissed it. Wildlife was unpredictable, he reasoned. Spotting a 10-foot alligator sunning on a fallen log 30 feet away, he decided to show off his expertise. "Let's get a closer look," he said, starting the engine and easing the boat toward the gator. The passengers leaned forward, cameras ready. That's when Big Rex struck. From the dark depths beneath the boat, the crocodile erupted like a missile, his 4-foot head, 200 pounds of bone and muscle, slamming into the airboat's side with the force of a car crash. The impact lifted the vessel half out of the water, splintering the hull and sending cameras and bags flying. Dave, leaning over the edge to point out the alligator, was thrown into the lagoon, landing just inches from Rex's gaping jaws. Teeth like railroad spikes flashed in the sunlight, and the crocodile's roar, a guttural, bone-rattling bellow, shook the air. For a heartbeat, the 22 passengers sat frozen, their minds struggling to process the nightmare. Then chaos erupted. Children screamed, clinging to their parents. Adults shouted conflicting orders. "Go back! Stay still!" as cameras splashed into the water. Captain Morrison, a weathered man who'd seen his share of swamp dangers, fumbled for the emergency shutoff, but the engine stalled, leaving the boat dead in the water. Dave surfaced, gasping, blood streaming from gashes torn by the initial strike. He was alive, but barely, his face pale with shock. Rex circled like a shark, his massive tail creating waves that rocked the crippled boat. "Throw me the rope!" Dave yelled, swimming frantically toward the airboat, his arms slicing through the blood-tinged water. The passengers were paralyzed, some sobbing, others clutching the boat's rails, unable to act. Morrison rummaged for emergency gear, but time seemed to slow, every movement agonizingly futile. Rex's eyes, cold and predatory, locked onto Dave, his body half submerged, his movements deliberate. At 11:48 a.m., the circling stopped. Rex had made his decision. The final attack came from below and behind, invisible until it was too late. With terrifying speed, Rex surged upward, his jaws clamping onto Dave's leg with 3,700 pounds of force per square inch. The sound was sickening, a wet crunch of bone and muscle, followed by Dave's scream, raw with pain and terror. Blood exploded across the lagoon's surface, staining the clear water a deep crimson. Rex began his death roll, a spinning maneuver that crocodiles use to disorient prey and snap bones. Dave's body twisted violently underwater, his arms flailing in a desperate bid for freedom. He surfaced once, his face a mask of blood and anguish, his eyes wide with the terrible realization of his fate. "Please help me," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the screams of the passengers. Then Rex pulled him under again. The water churned, then went still, a red stain spreading like a grim halo. Dave Carlson, father of two, husband, lover of the wild, was gone, claimed by the swamp he'd spent his life defending. The silence that followed Dave's disappearance was suffocating. The 22 passengers sat in stunned horror, their eyes fixed on the blood-stained water, their minds replaying the image of Dave's final, desperate plea. The airboat, its hull cracked and engine dead, drifted aimlessly in the lagoon. Captain Morrison's hands shook as he tried the radio, but it crackled uselessly, its signal lost in the swamp's vastness. Children sobbed, their faces buried in their parents' arms. Adults whispered prayers or stared blankly, unable to process the violence they'd witnessed. The lagoon, once a haven of beauty, now felt like a tomb, its stillness mocking their shock. Morrison finally found a flare gun and fired it into the sky, the red streak a silent cry for help in the endless wilderness. It took 43 agonizing minutes for rescue boats to arrive, their engines roaring through the channels as Coast Guard helicopters thumped overhead. By then, Big Rex had vanished into the maze of mangroves, taking Dave's body with him. The search for Dave became one of the largest operations in Everglades history, spanning 8 days and 200 square miles of treacherous terrain. Rangers combed narrow channels, divers braved murky waters filled with hidden snags, and drones scanned the canopy for any sign of the massive crocodile. But Rex's lair, a hidden underwater cave surrounded by impenetrable mangrove roots, was a fortress no human could breach. On the third day, searchers found fragments of Dave's life, pieces of his vest, torn fabric from his shirt, and bones later confirmed as his, scattered in a grotto deep in the swamp. The evidence told a grim story. Rex had dragged Dave to his private larder, a submerged cave where crocodiles store kills until the flesh softens for consumption. The discovery broke the hearts of the search team, many of whom had known Dave personally, and sent a chill through the nation. Dave was officially declared dead on August 23rd, 8 days after the attack. The autopsy, conducted on the sparse remains recovered, revealed massive trauma, crushed bones, deep puncture wounds, and evidence of the death roll that had ended his life in those final, terrifying moments beneath the lagoon. But Dave's death was only the beginning of a scandal that would rock the Everglades, the National Park Service, and the nation. Within hours of the attack, leaked documents exposed a shocking truth. The Park Service had introduced 6 saltwater crocodiles, including Big Rex, in a secret program to control invasive species like Burmese pythons, lionfish, and wild boars. The program, kept hidden from the public, local law enforcement, and even many rangers, was a desperate bid to restore the Everglades' collapsing ecosystem. Internal emails revealed that officials had known about Rex's aggression for months, his killing of a 12-foot alligator, his attacks on boats, his stalking of tour routes, but had failed to warn operators like Dave. Australian handlers had explicitly warned that Rex, a territorial male who'd killed 3 rival crocodiles in his native river, was too dangerous for areas with human activity. Those warnings were ignored, buried in bureaucratic processes to avoid public backlash. The public's reaction was swift and ferocious. Environmental groups that had once supported the program now demanded the immediate removal of all saltwater crocodiles. Tour operators, blindsided by the Park Service's secrecy, filed lawsuits, arguing they'd been endangered by deliberate negligence. Florida's congressional delegation, led by Senator Maria Rodriguez, labeled the program the most reckless wildlife management decision in American history. Sarah Carlson, Dave's widow, became the face of a burgeoning movement for reform. In a heart-rending testimony before Congress, she stood before a packed hearing room, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "My husband died because bureaucrats valued their experiment over human lives," she said. Dave reported unusual crocodile behavior 3 times in the weeks before his death. He knew the difference between an alligator and a crocodile. They told him his concerns were unsubstantiated. They should have listened. The congressional investigation uncovered a damning pattern of negligence, cover-ups, and institutional arrogance. Budget cuts had gutted ranger patrols and monitoring systems, allowing Rex to establish a territory that overlapped with popular tour routes. Reports of his attacks, a fisherman's boat rammed hard enough to crack its hull, a family of manatees vanishing overnight, were filed and forgotten in the bureaucratic. The capture footage, broadcast live on national news, showed a creature that seemed almost mythical in its size and power. Even heavily sedated, Rex fought with such ferocity that several experts admitted they'd never seen anything like it. One Australian crocodile specialist, brought in for the operation, called Rex the most aggressive saltwater crocodile I've encountered in 30 years of handling these animals. His stomach contents confirmed the worst fears. Dave wasn't his only victim. Rex had killed and consumed at least 4 large alligators, several manatees, and possibly a missing person from 6 months earlier, whose disappearance had been attributed to drowning. The operation to capture Rex and the other crocodiles was a logistical nightmare. 5 of the 6 were eventually located and returned to Australia, but 1 remained unaccounted for, raising fears that another massive predator might still lurk in the Everglades depths. The capture of Rex, though a triumph, came too late to undo the tragedy or quell the growing storm of public outrage. 5 years after the tragedy, the Everglades have regained a fragile balance, though the scars of that day remain etched in the minds of those who witnessed it and the community that loved Dave Carlson. Tourism has rebounded, with airboats once again gliding through the channels, but the industry operates under a new reality. Strict safety protocols, real-time wildlife tracking, mandatory ranger briefings, and restricted access to high-risk areas govern every tour. The Honey Hole, once Dave's prized destination, is now the Dave Carlson Memorial Wildlife Preserve, closed to tourists and marked by a simple plaque at the marina where his tours once launched. The inscription reads, "Dave Carlson, he showed us the wonder of the wild and reminded us that nature demands our respect." Below in smaller text are the words Sarah insisted be included. "Listen to those who know the wilderness. Their warnings might save your life." Sarah Carlson, now a tireless advocate, runs the Dave Carlson Wildlife Safety Foundation, dedicated to educating guides, tourists, and policymakers about the dangers of apex predators and the importance of transparency in wildlife management. Standing at the memorial on the 5th anniversary of Dave's death, she speaks with quiet resolve. "Dave loved the Everglades more than anything," she says, her eyes tracing the horizon where the swamp stretches endless and untamed. "His death has to mean something, to protect others from the same fate." Her foundation trains guides to recognize signs of dangerous wildlife, funds research into safer ecotourism practices, and lobbies for stricter oversight of wildlife programs. Sarah's work ensures that Dave's legacy is not just a story of loss, but a call to action, a reminder that the wild is a place of wonder and peril. Dave's story has transcended the Everglades, becoming a global cautionary tale. Documentaries about the attack draw millions of viewers, their dramatic reenactments capturing the raw terror of that day. Wildlife management programs worldwide now teach Dave's story, using it to illustrate the dangers of underestimating apex predators and the consequences of bureaucratic hubris. The Everglades remain a magnet for adventurers, drawn by the same wild beauty that captivated Dave. But his death has reshaped how we approach this frontier, reminding us that nature's rules are absolute. Dave's confidence, his unshakable love for the swamp, crossed into complacency, and in a place where predators like Big Rex reign, that line is razor thin. His legacy lives on in every safety protocol, every warning system, and every guide who pauses to honor the man who paid the ultimate price for trusting that nature would always be kind to those who respected it. In the end, Dave Carlson's greatest lesson wasn't about crocodiles or conservation or government failures. It was about the delicate balance between courage and caution, between love for the wild and recognition of its power. The Everglades, with their timeless beauty and unforgiving dangers, stand as a testament to that truth, a place where wonder and risk coexist, and where Dave's story will forever remind us to tread carefully in the domain of nature's most ancient rulers. If this story grips you, subscribe, like, and share this video with friends. We bring you true wildlife stories that demand to be remembered, understood, and learned from. Respect the wild, and we'll see you in the next video.